Oh, hi! This week, I thought I'd talk about my favorite console from generations 4 through 8. And you might be thinking, like, well, what about the other generations? Well, for Gen 9, like a lot of people, I don't have either system, the PS5 or Xbox Series. And I don't have a huge interest in them yet. Like, there's really nothing there catching my eye and stuff. I mean, aside from the fact they're impossible to find anyway. Excuse me. And as for the other ones, like, well, Gen 3 was. Well, I was born in the middle of Gen 3. It started in 85, and I was born in 87. And although I do have memories of that, but, I was trying to do ones that I was, like, well, alive for, so to speak. And then Gen 2 was, like, prior to the infamous video game crash of 1983. It was, like, the Atari 2600 and the Vectrex and ColecoVision and Television, etc. Fairchild. The only one of those that I actually remember was the Atari 2600 because my grandmother had one. I remember playing that as a kid. And then then Gen 1 was basically just like all Pong consoles and stuff. So all that aside, let's get right into it. So Gen 4, I'm sure you already know this. My favorite console from the 4th generation is the Super Nintendo. And, I talked about this in my countdown video. Was my favorite console of all time. It's just got great, the graphics are like I mentioned in that video, it has like a kind of a balance. Of course, it's like some of the greatest video game soundtracks of all time. Like, well, all these consoles have third-party games, but there's also, like, the exclusives, which are, like, what sells consoles. So, like, this Super Nintendo, there was Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, Donkey Kong Country games, the Mega Man X games, Super Metroid, which I think is probably my favorite game, or favorite first-party title on the system. And, it's just so many great memories with this thing. I remember, going over to my... Like, I had Tetris Attack, and my neighbor had King of the Monsters 2, and we played those games, like, religiously, basically. Like, we played them, like... I think we played those more than any other game. God, I remember, like, Pilot Wings, like, my... that was, like, one of the first games my brother bought. And it was like he would be spending the night over a friend's house, and because they had like a Super Nintendo or a Genesis or whatever, and it was like he would just leave his here, and then my stepfather and I would be like, hey, where are you going? Can we play Pilot Wings or something? But just and I could keep going, but I have so many great memories with the Super Nintendo. But I've talked about that probably more than enough in other videos. Gen 5 would have to be the PlayStation, which I don't have one. As I mentioned in my retro collecting video, I had one. I let my brother-in-law borrow it, and then his son, my nephew, was going through that throwing stage. He got his hands on it, and But that being said, a lot of great memories with the PS1. Even though that game, that system, a lot of the games really haven't aged well, but to this day, I think that system has, probably the greatest soundtracks, music in the history of the video game industry. And it was because it was, the first successful, CD console. There were ones before that. There was the, Genesis had the Sega CD, which really just didn't count. I remember my brother renting it, and it was pretty cool, but it was just, it was too early, so to speak. It was kind of like the infancy stage of CD games, and there was the Panasonic 3DO, which funny, I remember that made fun of Genesis and Super Nintendo, was saying oh, those are baby toys, this is the real console. My brother rented it, and I was I'm not impressed. Which even nowadays I'm and then there was the, what the hell do you call it, the CDI. Cat's pushing the blanket up. But the PlayStation, I think, was the first one that really did it right, so to speak. And again, so many great games on there. I'm trying to focus on first party games, exclusives. There was the first two Suikoden games, the Anal Hats, the Twisted Metal games, the Jet Moto games. I think the Bloody Roar was exclusive to that, but God, yes. Again, so many great memories of that system. Like that was, and it's funny. It's like it almost feels like a lot of the generations were like different points of my life. So to speak, like the Gen 4 was when I was in elementary school. Gen 5 was when I was in middle school. But yeah, I remember my brother got one of the first games he got was Crazy Ivan, which yes, cat's looking to jump up. It was a game called Crazy Ivan, spelled with a K, and it was like this mech robot game. I think he still has it actually. Back when the PS1 games had like the long box, it was kind of interesting. And I remember there was like what was called like PlayStation Underground discs. It was like this subscription that like every month, and they would send me like this a disc with like a bunch of PS1 demos on it. Like some of them were just like short, like 2-minute videos. Others were like demos of games you could play, and it was actually a number of games that we had, my brother and I discovered through there. Like there was Spyro, Bloody Roar. That was one that we were really excited for. For those who don't remember it, it was like a game where it was a fighting game where you could like transform into animals or animal people. Very underrated series. I feel like I'm trying to think what other games we discovered through there. I think Monster Rancher was one. Silent Hill was another one, and the list goes on. But that was, yeah, like I said, the system, sure, the graphics haven't really aged well, but still got a lot of, the music to this day I think is amazing. Like, like some of the best in the gaming industry. Now, moving on to Gen 6, which, going back to the different points of my life and stuff, this was when I was in high school. No, junior high, excuse me. Junior high and high school. This was a tricky one because it was like, there was Gen 6, it was like the PS2, the GameCube, the Xbox, and the Dreamcast, even though it was short-lived, and it was like, so many of them were, all of them were great consoles, and I have so many great memories with them, but it was like, gotta go with the PS2. Like, that is definitely my favorite console from that generation. Which, funny, I bought this used a few years ago, and it still has, like, that broadband adapter thing screwed into it. But, the memories with this thing is, like, I remember, it was funny, I remember when my brother bought his, because our mom was the kind of person that was, like, a lot of times when we'd buy a new console, we had to kind of, like, hide it. It's like, can't you, like, get rid of the old one before you buy a new one or something like that? It's like, some people would hold on to their consoles and games, or others would, like, trade them in or whatever, but yeah, I remember, I think the first game he bought was SmackDown. Just Bring It, this is when they named him after the wrestlers and stuff. It was either Just Bring It or the other one, Shut Your Mouth, Leo. Like I said, it was like Rock's quotes, the Rock's quotes, and that was, to this day, I think that was one of the best wrestling games. Like, I remember playing it with, like, my brother and, like, friends and stuff, and it was, like, the character creation was great, and it was just, it was, like, it had, like, this almost, like, goofiness to it or something. Like, this was back when SmackDown, the SmackDown Titantron had the fist in front of it. You could, like, climb on top of that and jump off the fist. You could go backstage and hit each other with, like, potted plants and drive forklifts around. You could, if it was a winter pay-per-view, you could go outside and throw snowballs at each other. It was such a fun game. And you just could make all these, like, really wacky characters and everything. I used to play that all the time. I still remember some of the commercials, too. And I think it was, I don't know if it was that one or not. I remember it was one of them. You could actually watch the commercials on the game. I don't know if it was that SmackDown game or a different one, but I remember you could, like, watch some of the TV commercials on the game. And another game that we played the crap out of was Time Splitters, specifically the first game. The first game, the campaign wasn't that great. It was really weird, but it was like, God, I remember two old friends of my brothers, Tim and Ken, they came over, and the four of us would play that game for hours. Like, it was just, it was a first-person shooter, which, if you never heard of it, it's like all these really wacky characters, and like, like one of the characters is a duck guy, and my brother came up with a match that we used to do all the time. It was called Duck Hunt. It was basically just what the hell do you call it? I almost said tag team. It was multiplayer co-op or whatever the hell you want to. I'm drawing a blank on the name. Brain fat. But it was me, Aaron, my brother Aaron, and his two friends. Then against like team deathmatch. That's what it's called. It was the four of us against like 8 Duckman Drake guys, which is yeah. There's so many great games for the PS2. The list goes. Twisted Metal Black. That was another one we used to play all the time. I remember like watching like all the rewatching like the characters like profiles and everything. Like it's like each character has like a story that it's like beginning, middle, and end. Like as you play through the campaign. War of the Monsters was another one that's made by the same company as Twisted Metal Black. Very underrated. Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other PS2 games. I mean, like, cause I was never really a lot of the like more bigger titles like God of War, Ratchet and Clank. I personally never really got into those. Not saying they're bad or anything. I just wasn't really a fan. But yeah, so many great games for PS2. It's actually to this day the biggest selling console of all time. It's over the course of time it sold 155 million units. I don't know if anything will ever top that. Maybe like PS4 is still I think it has surpassed a lot of them. Like I know PS1 was in second with 103 million. Wii was in third with 101, give or take, and then I think PS4 has surpassed them, and like Switch might be closing up, but I don't know. I don't know if anything will ever top that PS2. So, moving on to Gen 7, the Xbox 360, which, probably the most, this, didn't have a whole lot of exclusives, unfortunately, because, well, there's various reasons for it, but I won't go into that right now. But, it did have some good games, like, exclusive-wise, like, Cameo, which is highly underrated. That was originally going to be a GameCube game because it was made by Rare. It was a game that Rare was working on, but they kind of put it on the back burner, and then when they were bought by Microsoft, they decided to bring it back, and it became a launch title. Again, very underrated. Hopefully, maybe down the road they'll make a sequel. Who knows? Or maybe like somebody could make a spiritual successor or something. But obviously like the Halo and Gears of War games, like Gears of War 2 is definitely my favorite. Halo Reach was one that I think I've talked about in videos before. My brother would set up like nights where a bunch of us would all play like a bunch of custom Halo Reach games, modes and stuff. And obviously there's all like third-party titles. Like I remember one of the first games I bought was Left 4 Dead, which was also available on the PS3. But yeah, the 360, and to be honest, the controller is like a lot of people like don't like it. I think it's of the D-pad, but it's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine. I love the 360 controller. I think it was, I don't know. I just found it really comfortable to hold and everything. This was like the first console that I played online with, like Gears of War, Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead 2, Halo Reach, Halo 4, which is kind of like the black sheep of the franchise. I really liked Halo 4. I loved the story in that game. I think it's highly underappreciated. Again, the music in that game is amazing. Excuse me. Yeah. So, finally, Gen 8 is the Switch. Now, there's always like speculation, like some say the Switch is Gen 8, some is Gen 9. I think it's Gen 8, because it's like, well, it's basically just like see, the Wii was pretty much like, even though that was a 7th gen console, it was pretty much like a beefed up GameCube with motion controls. And the Switch, even though it is, well, it's more like, I feel like it's kind of like a beefed up Wii U, so to speak, even though, so I feel like, there are times, there are generations where some companies will put out more than one console, so to speak. Like, probably one company that was notorious for that was Sega. I'd say the Switch is 8th gen, because it's like, Well, for one thing, in March this thing is going to be 5 years old, whereas the PS5 and Xbox Series are about to reach their first anniversary. And another thing with this is the Switch. The hardware is outdated. And it's starting to show, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there's still a lot of great games on this and everything. But it's always been a struggle for third party developers to get games to run on this. They have pulled it off, like, and it's even if they're not like as gorgeous or like run as smooth or whatever, it's still impressive that they can get the games to run on this. But yeah, like that. So point is, I honestly think the Switch is an 8th-gen console. But yeah, awesome system. Like, I got mine on the 1-year anniversary. There's so many great games on it. Like, there's Smash Brothers Ultimate. Aside all the ports and stuff, there's Mario Odyssey. Fire Emblem Warriors was the game that made me buy it. ARMS, very underrated. What else is there? Trying to avoid like remakes and stuff. Pokemon Sword and Shield, which, controversial game whether you love it or hate it. It's still, like, I thought the games were flawed, but still fun. Fire Emblem 3 Houses. And what's great is that, it's awesome, because there's multiple ways to play it. Like, you can play it in handheld, you can play it on the TV, whichever you'd prefer to do. Like, I go back and forth. But yeah, absolutely fun system. Like, even though, yeah. But those are just my favorite consoles from generations 4 through 8. And do you have any favorites from those generations, and maybe even some of the other generations? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, thanks for watching.